ways of life, but at the same time to imbibe the best and the highest traditions of the Western culture in science. In doing so, he started opening department after department in the postgraduate teaching, and by 1914 he had established a postgraduate teaching in arts and science. I believe there where his relationship with the government came to be strained. And the government of India at the beginning was prepared to provide funds. And Sir Ashutosh, it's a boon and a fortune that two of the greatest donors of the Calcutta University in those days were Sir Taraknath Palit and Sir Raj Behari Ghosh. They provided funds. Incidentally, both of them had contributed funds initially to the national education, which is now Jadavpur University in its transformation, but then it was a national education, and in which they had funded but did not succeed, to the amount what was expected with national education. The reasons I need not go into. So that experiment failed. Then they gave their largesse to the Calcutta University, either on persuasion or their own will. Large amounts were given by Sir Taraknath Palit and by Sir Raj Behari Ghosh. Sir Raj Behari Ghosh's second donation came later years. These helped Sir Ashutosh to create professorships, readership, lecturership, research scholars, fellowship for foreign travel for the students. Same was the case with Sir Palit. And it's rather curious that Sir T.N. Palit had a son, Loknath Palit. It's a matter of anecdote that he deprived his son to give property to the Calcutta University. And also, it is a story, I don't know how far it's true, Sir Ashutosh himself went to take possession of the house on the Ballygunge Circular Road of Sir Taraknath Palit, lest there be a resistance from his descendants. So that's how personal involvement was, to the extent Sir Ashutosh's involvement was. These magnificent donations, apart from donation by Maharaja of Darbhanga, which made the Darbhanga building construction possible, a donation from the Khaira Raj made possible for creation of lectureship in physics, a professor of physics, and also opening of a subject which is not taught in those universities at all, on fine arts. Baghet Sharif. He persuaded Abhindranath Tagore to be a professor. These are things. So therefore, in his wide expanse of knowledge and imagination, it is possible for Sir Ashutosh to create the Calcutta University a seat of learning and research. So his vision, and also, the one thing he did was he promoted the Indian languages. While he's still a member, I hope I'm not very too long. May I continue for another 5-10 minutes? I'm sure I was stepping my time.
Certainly.
Now, I know how busy Professor Majid is here. I am detaining by doing so. Now, at our age, naturally, you get into anecdotes, and therefore, permit me, make an allowance for my age. Anyway, as Sir Ashutosh, as I said, had attempted in 1891 itself, a young senator, to introduce Bengali as a medium of instruction and a course of study. But in spite of his support he had received from Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, who was his fellow member in the Senate, he was unable to do so. His second attempt failed. But at the end, he made wide provision for teaching both ancient Indian languages, Sanskrit, Pali, Buddhist studies, and also Bengali language. And the first MA in Bengali was my second uncle, Shama Prasad Mukherjee. Having read in the Presidency College in English honours, has got a first-class honours, but he read Bengali in MA. Anyway, Sir Ashutosh's other contribution was the value of education as a bond between the different parts of India. So that is his Bengali writings are contained in a book called Jatiyo Sahitya, national language. Therefore, as much as emphasis was on science and arts as for higher studies, he also emphasized the need for promoting, need for development of the Indian languages. Surprising, the languages of the states like Odisha and Assam were first taught in Calcutta. Therefore, the other thing which the bond he thought of. So that, as I'm coming back to my story, I mean, if you call me a story, Sir Ashutosh, I mean, his attempt to expand the education and research, it resulted naturally a strife, if you could use that expression, with the government of those days were unwilling to provide funds as much as asked for. Therefore, although he did not become again a vice chancellor till 1921, continued strife occurred. He became a member of the Sadler Commission, and it was thought of that by taking him away from the commission, I mean, it would be possible for him to be away from the functioning of the Calcutta University. But then, I mean, Sir Sadler Commission of Sir Michael Sadler embodied his reports mainly what Sir Ashutosh's views on higher education and teaching was. That's the other story. And the other thing I wanted to say was that Sir Ashutosh, in his attempt to make Calcutta University the prime seat of learning, had invited lecturers, teachers from far and wide, both in India and also from outside India. I was heartened to find name of Sir C.V. Raman. Sir C.V. Raman, I mean, from Calcutta. Of course, he did not go back from Calcutta. It's a very happy reason for another reason. For many years after Sir Ashutosh's death, was carrying on his researches at Raman Institute. One of my second brother, who was himself a zoologist, I mean, he had gone and met Sir C.V. Raman. Sir Raman, even in his old age, before his death, was profuse in his praise of Sir Ashutosh, naturally acknowledged his indebtedness to him. Then he said, "Do you know what I call him? I call Sir Ashutosh a Jahuri." As you know, Bengali word Jahuri means one who can find out gems, who can judge. So that's why it is possible, Sir C.V. Raman, to describe him. And therefore, as I've said, Sir Ashutosh himself was very, very, I mean, learned in various subjects, but then, I mean, that is not often given to all of us. People who are great is unable to say greatness in others. It has been said that if there is a light, there is always a shadow and darkness below it. It was not so in Sir Ashutosh's case. He could discern, he could find out, promote persons like Meghnad Satyendranath Basu and the whole band of the Calcutta School of, I mean, scientists under Sir P.C. Roy to be world-class scientists. So also in the Oriental studies he did so. And therefore, as I've said, that it is possible now, I don't say possible, I mean, it is also very relevant, it is now necessary also to look at what he did to make higher education promoted. Why? I mean, in his speeches, which are going to be published in a day or two, I mean, convocation addresses which are now out of print, where he has said about what he thinks of education, his trials, his conflict with the government, his attempt to promote education, and his versatility about when he has spoken about scholars, about researchers, persons he had given, I mean, honorary degrees. He has mentioned about their researchers. His acquaintance was, astounding in that sense. In fact, in the nature after his death, in writing the obituary, it was said that he was a co-worker. It appeared he was almost a co-worker to research people who are doing research and a fellow researcher, what he have found to be. So that is one matter about the, of course, Rabindranath, in imparting education, wanted to bring it closer to nature. For him, the sky, the trees, the river, they form the background of teaching and not the bricks and mortar. Anyway, but even then, at the end, their objective was seen. The path they tread was different. Therefore, there have been, on occasion, Sir Ashutosh and Rabindranath came together. And Sir Ashutosh made, on occasion, extended help to poet Rabindranath. For example, in getting Professor Levy, brought to Shantiniketan to teach, he provided teaching charge. And himself was able to persuade Rabindranath to teach. Of course, there was criticism about it. And also conferred the honorary doctorate in Rabindranath even before he had obtained the Nobel Prize. And in his last but one convocation address, Sir Ashutosh had quoted Rabindranath's that famous poem, Prarthana from Naivedya, as a concluding part of his speech. Therefore, great men do come together on occasions. Of course, their thinking may be different, path they tread may be different. But as I've said, when you forge, and particularly we are very glad to see Professor Marjit here. He has his views about higher education ought to be. It is necessary to remember that the what has been done in the past are not an example, but they also they are the ways to see how we, in the changed circumstances, in a country which is now independent, how a higher education will take us higher and to greater heights, which unfortunately seems to be rather crowded at the present moment. May I thank all of you for having invited me and being patient with me in listening. I confess I'm a little longer than I should have been, but then naturally, the blood is thicker than water. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that very gripping expose. And I think we were all glued to our seats. May I now request Professor Sugato Marjit, Chairman, West Bengal State Council for Higher Education, to please give us a special address. Professor Marjit. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Honorable Sri Chittatosh Mukherjee, other distinguished guests, friends. It is a great privilege for me to come and speak on this occasion, particularly celebrating the 150th anniversary of great Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee. I'm also indebted to Sri Mukherjee for his extended speech, because I learned a lot from the anecdotes that he was mentioning, as well as the other speakers who have described in detail the achievements of Sir Ashutosh, which are of course in public domain. And as a Bengali, we are remarkably proud of that such a person actually in flesh and blood existed in this city. And today I shall not devote the little time I have towards sort of describing or analyzing the performance of Sir Ashutosh, because that would be redundant given the expertise and the knowledge that this august audience has about Sir Ashutosh. Let me just talk about certain issues which I think one needs to learn from the experience that we have from the lives and work of Sir Ashutosh, and how it has affected and it has influenced me in my minuscule role as someone who is involved with higher education of the state. There is no doubt that the person from whom I have tried to learn most is Sir Ashutosh. In fact, if someone studies the way he tried to energize and encourage young scholars to get into research of international standard, the way he went out of his way to promote scientists, academicians, so that they can measure up to the requirement of the best quality education, the way he actually exercised his discretion to create institutions and departments and seats of learning, the way he influenced the minds of those who were associated with him, and the way he has built up a vision for higher education for this state and the country at large, is a way that anyone who is motivated to work in this direction must try to follow. The interesting part of Sir Ashutosh, as it has been described by Professor Y.S. Rajan in his nice article which I was reading just now, and also as it has been mentioned by Honorable Sri Chittatosh Mukhopadhyay, you'd see that Sir Ashutosh was not only someone who was only providing vision, but he was actually working out that vision. He was actually trying to create something which is much more tangible than the vision. And that's why Sir Ashutosh could actually accomplish such great amount of work. For us, there are two kinds of problems that we face now in higher education. And as I face it in West Bengal, and as I talk to my national colleagues, and as I talk to my friends all over the country faces similar problems. This has to do with both quantity and quality of higher education. Quantity is important. Sometimes people fail to understand that one issue that Sir Ashutosh was involved with was creating more departments, creating more scope for postgraduate studies, getting education, higher education to those who usually do not have access to such education, and of course quality education. Today, the gross enrollment ratio of higher education in this country is around 18%, which means that if 100 students enter primary school, only about 19 of them enter colleges. If you look at the West Bengal's higher education enrollment ratio, this is around 13%, which is lower than the national average. The national average is being sought to be improved up to 30% by 2025, but the West Bengal has to work a whole lot more, because the West Bengal has to get up to that 19% or 20% to be equal to that national average. It is important that we take these numbers very seriously. This is the reason that we need to spread out the access to higher education to different corners of the state. There is a huge demand for higher education in the state. There is no doubt about that. Many studies have been done, and in particular, there have been some studies, internal ones, which have been done by the private, potential private universities in the state. When they actually submit very detailed project report, and we discuss with them, they find, and the proposals are coming to set up universities in districts which are far off from Calcutta, and we ask them that, what will you get out of setting up universities here? And they say that you have to know how many students from this place actually move away from Bengal to other parts of India for higher education. And they want to actually bank on that. And I said, you also need teachers to teach. And they said that 60 years is too early for teachers to retire. So we do have a stock of good university, set of teachers who are retired from the university, you can use them. Whatever it is, the demand for higher education is significant in the state and is significant in India. So the GER, which is commonly known, the gross enrollment ratio, if you want to push that up, we have to create more scope for higher education. There is no doubt about that. That's about quantity. What about quality? If you look at the Times Higher Education Supplement, which actually ranks institutions all over the world, you will find that India, no Indian university actually is featured in top 100. Now this has got nothing to do with particular problems that the state is having, but even the best of the national institutions, the universities, they don't find their place in that ranking. Now ranking is not everything, that we all know. Those who deal with ranking knows that we can change the criterion, we can actually change the weights, we can look at different categories, and we can, if in mathematical terms, it means that if really want to get for each ranking, there exists a method by which I can achieve that ranking. So I'm not putting a lot of emphasis on that ranking, but the fact remains that in spite of some of the departments, some of the faculty members of this state are doing remarkable work, absolutely international, global standard work, we do not have a very kind of convincing picture if you look at it in a very holistic manner. Quality is a very important issue. The problem that policymakers tend to face is the stock of supply of quality scholars and the demand for quality teaching. It's not true that if I actually hunt for quality teachers all around the globe and ask them to come to West Bengal, they're going to come. So the question therefore is, you have to promote quality from within. You have to energize the assistant professors, the young colleagues, because you have to give them a lot of impetus in terms of resources, in terms of encouragement to make their research, make their teaching world standard. So they will grow into senior faculty members and become those, give you that quality, and at the same time try very hard to get quality people to come and teach in the universities. Resources are a problem. Resources, as we have just heard from Sri Mukherjee, resources were a problem then as well. But that did not stop Sir Ashutosh actually to sort of revolutionize the higher education system. There have to be approaches that one should, innovative approaches to see that how you can use the existing resources, create more resource base at the same time to encourage young scientists. In a recent endeavor that we have started with the initiative of the Council, we have something called, this is absolutely influenced by the philosophy of Sir Ashutosh. It's called the Statewide University Network, or the SUN project, in which what we are trying to do is to gather the universities, bring them together through collaborative ventures, the state universities, collaborative ventures through workshops, conferences, etc., so that the teachers and students of different universities, different departments can come together and sort of get into collaborative research or collaborative conferences and so on. And this would be done year-long on a rotational basis. So 2-3 universities come together and they will do it. We have already done it for 4 to 5 cases. The first one was on mathematics. It was actually held in Purulia at the SKBU, which is the Sidhu Kano Birsa University, jointly held with the West Bengal State University, Barasat, and collaborated also with the Indian Statistical Institute. The first one was on mathematics, the second one was on physics, on economics in Vidyasagar University and the State University. The third one was on Bardhaman University and Kolkata University in physics. And there are now a series of proposals that are coming through from different universities that they want to organize this. And the seed money has been partly provided by the Department of Higher Education. The Council is providing some resources, the universities are providing some resources, and we are welcoming proposals so that PhD students, young scholars across universities can interact and they can actually form some sort of research group or something. We are also allowing for that if there is an infrastructural bottleneck in one university, we are trying to encourage collaboration across universities so that the young scholars can get help of the laboratories and infrastructure of other universities, more established universities. We are also planning, subject to the approval of the Council, and we have been planning that, and this is a great occasion to announce. We are going to actually initiate research award for young faculty members, which they can use for their own research, for conferences or any kind of activities. I'll try to make that amount as substantial as possible. And one of them definitely would be initiated in the name of Sir Ashutosh on mathematical sciences. We have already decided that. We are also trying to chip in, bring in to commemorate the 150 years of Swami Vivekananda, to sort of start off with a distinguished lecture series, national, international, where the distinguished speakers would come and would travel to few universities and lecture. And we are arranging for those resources, and the universities and council will join hands together to do it. The point that I think is very important that we should all think about is how to utilize the experiences and the work of Sir Ashutosh in fostering higher education in the state. Little anecdotes, little efforts that we hear of, some of them one cannot imitate simply, because part of it because of that towering, the towering personality himself cannot be imitated, and part of it is because rules, regulations, norms, politics bind us much more now than they used to before. And this is, there are historical legacies, the baggages with which we are trying to run 100 meters with hunchbacks on our back. And this is not very easy. But at the same time, at the top, to initiate something in higher education never gets political interference in place, simply because the higher education is a very specialist job. It's just like, you can't really audit your accounts, without specialized accountants. You cannot run a physical research lab with sociologists. You cannot write historical books, just on fine morning, thinking yourself to be a historian. There's some professionalism that is expected. Because Sir Ashutosh was a remarkable academic scholar, because he had a very wide perspective, starting, being a tremendous mathematician,